Hello, I am Rosana Jatobá, and I would like to invite you to participate in this conversation with an electronics engineer specializing in computer science and graphics, virtual reality, and neural networks. He has been a professor at the Escola Politécnica, University of São Paulo, for 32 years. Welcome, Professor Marcelo Zuffo. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Everything is good, Rosanna. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Professor, long before we started this whole conversation about the Industry 4.0, we know that Escola Politécnica from University of São Paulo has created a digital cave, which is a digital platform and a process visualization tool for critical decision making in engineering. Can you tell us more about this digital cave?
Well, thank you so much for the question. It's really a pleasure for me to talk about the digital cavern, as we call it. Precisely this month, on the 30th, we are celebrating actually 20 years of this pioneering lab in Brazil. And it is true. Virtual reality, back when we first started, that was a topic that was dealt with as scientific fiction. And today, in modern times, virtual reality is almost a tool that is really essential for every sector of the economic activity, and especially, at this moment that is in the post-pandemic period, in which we cannot be connected personally, we cannot be physically connected. We just concluded our International Virtual Reality Congress last week. The Congress was conducted virtually. It was done in Lisbon. And we were discussing a lot about how virtual reality is going to help society in the post-pandemic world. And through the interview, I'm going to give you some concrete examples about how we are using technology at this moment.
Virtual cave. I love the name. It has a touch of mystery, makes one think of shelter. Tell us exactly how it works, in practical terms.
Well, the virtual cavern, or virtual cave, as we call it, is actually a tribute to the very first report, to the very first register of humanity of virtual reality. Actually, it was Plato, thousands of years ago, that wrote a text, which is the allegory of Plato's cave. And in this allegory, he discusses a very human matter. And more recently, a Homo sapiens issue, which is how we deal with our imagery, with our imagination. And computing really enables us to have a virtual space. Informatics is nothing but human imagination translated into machines. And considering the knowledge of the society that we live today, for example, we are conducting a virtual meeting right now. We are doing this with a video technology. And in a few years, Rosanna, perhaps you will be represented by an avatar and I'll be represented by my avatar, and using artificial intelligence technique, we'll be able to communicate in a more convenient way. As a matter of fact, today, we don't talk about virtual reality anymore. The term that we are using is XR, or extreme realities. In other words, these technologies can really expand the frontiers of the current reality. I'll give you a simple example. How could we experience a presence in the surface of Mars by using those technologies, and not necessarily by going there physically? So the term that we use today is XR. Our research group has been working quite hard in the convergence between artificial intelligence and virtual reality. We believe there will be a new string of research and knowledge when we have more of an interaction between our physical reality with virtual reality, or with extreme virtual reality and artificial intelligence. So that is precisely the point that our research group is at today at the university.
And Professor, in your eyes, how can virtual reality contribute in some way for the technological improvement we are going through at a faster and faster pace with the advent of new technologies and also for increased competitiveness in the industry. How does this abstract topic, so to speak, applies to the practical aspects of daily living?
The answer to your question is in your question itself, Rosanna. Virtual reality and artificial intelligence, these are technologies that facilitate the decision-making process. That is to say that we are able to do things better and faster when we use the technology. Because to put it in simple terms, before the technology is ready to go, we have tools that help us to anticipate, to keep a step forward. So, for example, I have to design a new car that is going to be ready the next year. And with months in advance, I have a digital prototype. Quite recently, digital prototyping, which we call a virtual Gemini. With this level of technology that we have, we can get such a thorough project. And this can really be, it can really be represented in a digital or virtual way. It's what we call a Gemini or a virtual twin, in other words. So with that, a lot of decisions and a lot of enhancements that we would make to the project after it was done, we can anticipate that. And finally, artificial intelligence. This is a mechanism for us to anticipate some situations. And when we anticipate those scenarios, we stand to gain a lot in agility, we stand to gain a lot in terms of time to market, and we stand to gain a lot in competition. So, in other words, virtual reality and artificial intelligence are really the lubricants in this process of being more agile. The organizations that use those tools with a lot of intensity, they gain a lot of time and a lot of agility. So that's the search. That's what we do when we apply those technologies.
These are concepts we see on a daily basis. But how would you describe the understanding people have of subjects such as virtual reality, artificial intelligence?
Well, Brazil is a very interesting country in this sense. When you look at the international studies, we assess a lot of international papers that deal with what we call awareness or the perception of these technologies. And Brazil is on the level of many countries that are quite advanced in this field. Our issue is to apply this technology in a very agile way, and thus overcoming some local intrinsic problems. The recommendation that I make to everyone else is to not wait. Do it. Apply technology as soon as you can. And always do that with a certain measure of gain in performance, gain in productivity, gain in processes. Now, these are technologies that have never been so democratic as they are right now. So along with the technology, along with the advent of artificial intelligence and virtual reality, there is a movement that is ongoing in the world which is called the open source movement. The vast majority of these tools are open to the public. All you have to do is do your research, download it from the internet, install it in your computer, and start using it. So we really have three pillars that form a tripod of innovation, which is extreme reality or extreme virtual reality, which mixes mixed reality, augmented reality with artificial intelligence and the open source movement. That's the tripod. Give you an example. When we created a digital cave a couple of decades ago, things were not the way they are. We really had to fight in terms of the government regulations, the state regulations. I actually had to borrow money from the municipality because a lab of this magnitude was very expensive. It's about $1 million, and this is all very much registered in our internet memory. And these days, with not a lot of funds, we are able to work with artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and we can do this with open source. So my recommendation is to not wait, just do it. And you don't have to look for support necessarily, because a lot of the information is already made available online.
Because apart from the financial challenges involved in such a project, my question was because I imagine some people still resist this topic. Many think that artificial intelligence means machines will take over and dominate human beings. Does this common myth still stand?
Well, this thing that you are describing here, Rosanna, if you want to go more in depth about it, this is what we call technophobia. It's that fear, Some humans are afraid of the technology. I say some of the humans because we have a whole lot of researchers and a whole lot of professors here at the university that are not afraid of technology at all. But if you recall, back when steam engines were invented, people were scared about it. Some people said that no human being could withstand traveling in a vehicle where the speed actually went beyond 100 kilometers an hour. Today our challenge is to reach the speed of light, and we are actually aware that the speed of light is slow, in fact, now that we are installing bases in Mars, and it takes roughly 5 to 10 minutes for the information to reach there, depending on the relative position of the planets. We are learning that the speed of light is actually not that fast. I mean, it takes a long time for a message to be exchanged between here and Mars. And 200 years ago, people were scared of going into a steam-powered engine, or a car, or a train. And I think to myself, and that has to do with the cave, I'm thinking about the first human that manipulated fire. People were probably afraid of it. This is part of the evolution. Now, to answer your question, are we talking about technology or progress? I mean, look at our conversation. We are speaking here through video conference. Look how wonderful this technology is. Even though there is a pandemic going on, we can be having this discussion. Of course, it would be much better if we were in person. But think about the Spanish flu pandemic, and look how convenient this is. Look how much progress mankind has made. So this technology is related to the human evolution and progress, but I think it's really important for us as humans to be a little afraid of technology as well. We know very well that some humans do a lot of harm with technology. They do a lot of wrong things, and we see this on Facebook with the fake news, for example. This is a topic that is, it's absolutely ridiculous in terms of human behavior, but perhaps this fear of technology will make good people create some limits to use that technology, because in the recent past we were using technology for good and for bad. For example, warfare. But technology is progress. Technology is well-being, and technology is human evolution. And it's also about transformation. But when you look at the whole picture, we have reached this far thanks to technology.
I want to ask you about the university's contribution. I hear you have created Inspire, a project devoted to manufacturing ventilators in Brazil at a low cost. We are going through a massive sanitary crisis with lots of difficulties. It's very complex. We are in a dire situation. So tell us about this project and how you are developing these ventilators.
Right, Rosanna. This is actually a great project as well. We went through the industrial age, and now we are in the info era, or in the information age. And this pandemic is like warfare. This pandemic is a war between human beings and viruses. And the weapons that we are deploying to be able to fight this virus is our knowledge. But if you look at humanity and the way that our economy came to a screeching halt, and how we are just on lockdown in our houses, we are behaving like the citizens back in World War II, when they had to stay at home because they were afraid of being bombed, they were afraid of combat and all the consequences of traditional warfare. So I think that, in my opinion, I think that this pandemic, perhaps history will tell us better in the future, but we are going through sort of a third world war. But our enemy today is the virus, and the weapons that we are using to be able to fight this virus is human knowledge. And in this context, roughly 1 year ago, we participated in a major congress of technology in Las Vegas. So the professors here in the university used to partake in these congresses. It's been roughly 18 months that we don't travel anywhere. But in this congress, which is a huge event, it's an event that is attended by 250 people. All of Las Vegas is focused on this event. And the news that were coming from China was very scary. The Chinese delegation didn't attend. They were on lockdown. And they were talking about this deadly disease that was incurable. You're able to prevent it with the vaccine, or you are able to treat it in a palliative way. So we were getting this very scary report, this horrific tales of people that were dying because they were out of breath. They were dying of acute respiratory syndrome, where you collapse your lungs and people just essentially suffocate to death. And the only equipment to treat this disease was ventilators. And these ventilators are very expensive. These are very sophisticated pieces of equipment. And we heard that there wasn't any innovation in this field. With the same ventilators that we use today, the same ventilators that we use today are the ones we used 10 years ago. And there hasn't been any innovation on the field whatsoever. In the midst of this confusion, our director, which by the way is the first female director in the Polytechnician University, she gathered all the faculty in our very last in-person meeting, and she said, look, this is like war, a lot of people are going to die. This will be perhaps the deadliest event for human beings after World War II. This is not only a medical issue, this is an engineering issue as well. I am sure that if you get together, you'll come up with some answers. 3 minutes later, our professor Raul Gonzalez, who is the lead of bioengineering here, he came up to me and said, Marcelo, we have to design and manufacture ventilators. I told him, I said, Raul, I've never seen one in life. He said, it's easy, let's get it started. So the positive thing is that 24 hours later, we had our first prototype. 72 hours in, we already had about 1,200 of our students that already had their diplomas. They donated almost 240 reals. And then 1 week later, we had almost 200 volunteers. So we started on March 15. By April 10, we applied for a registration in Anvisa. And days later, we had the equipment approved by Anvisa. Fortunately, in the first wave of the pandemic, there were emergency ventilators. We designed emergency ventilators, the ones that wouldn't allow people to suffocate if there was a shortage of the real equipment. But thank God, the national industry was able to meet the demands very well in the first wave of the pandemic. And then we thought to ourselves, oh, should we stop this project or should we continue? We have a very valuable support that comes from our Brazilian Navy. The Navy has a basis here in the university. They are our trench siblings, as we call them. Today they are working around the clock, 24/7. They are working on 3 shifts. And we made a decision in September, back when the first wave was done, we decided not to stop. And just to give you an idea, on December 25th, 2020, and on December 31st, 2020, I left the university on the 31st at 11 p.m. We actually did a video conference with our families. We were on lockdown. We couldn't really see each other face to face. So I did a video chat with my family, but I was here at the university. And one thing that was really important, Rosanna, is that we had a second wave that really hit the city of Manaus really hard in the north of the country. So in the first week of January, we were sending 50 ventilators to Manaus, and we reached 14 hospitals. And this week, We already reached 300 hospitals, with 300 ventilators, almost 60 hospitals. And we have a lot of ventilators that are operating in Ribeirão Preto, Concordia, Rio de Janeiro, Manaus, in the Amazon. And this is the INSPIRE project. And what is going to be really good is how we can get organized to make sure that we have massive innovation movements.
Professor, I see we're going through a dichotomy between a tragic event that costs so many lives and causes so much destruction, but at the same time accelerates processes and brings a leap forward in terms of quality and innovation. I could spend the whole day talking to you because you have so much knowledge. I hope we can create a fertile environment for technology, innovation, and science to flourish in Brazil. Sadly, Brazil does not invest as much as the US and China that allocate 2.5% of the GDP to science, technology, and innovation. Not the case in Brazil. But we thank you for your participation in this festival. And due to time constraints, I cannot prolong this conversation, although I would love to. I wish you all the best, good luck, and until next time.
Thank you very much.
What a great conversation. And you in the audience, don't go away, because in this festival in Nova Klabin, we will talk about proposal, innovation, and much more. See you again soon.